city of Houston since I have become mayor in this city, or used as an open-air latrine that creates a public health hazard, or used as a base for defecating on private property nearby, or breed disease knowingly or not. In previous visits, the city has found tons of soil that needed to be removed because of contamination by human waste, spoiled food, and other substances, and Dr. Peirce can speak specifically as it relates to that. I will say that I asked Dr. Peirce just within the last couple of weeks to go back out and examine this encampment as well as the one downtown, and found extreme public health hazards that exist in both locations. And that contaminated dirt has been removed by the ton in previous deep cleaning. Now we find that similar conditions in other cities have led to hepatitis outbreaks. There were actions the city was taken to shut down illegal acts and prevent public health hazards. We do not want these encampments to be havens for lawlessness or criminal activity, or create public health hazards for the people who are here or for the people that reside in our city that are not a part of these encampments. I will tell you the reason for this press conference this morning is that not only am I concerned, the members of city councils are concerned, Dr. Peirce, many others are concerned about what is taking place in these encampments and the fact that the situation has worsened since the federal restraining order has been put in place. This neighborhood deserves better, the city deserves better, and very candidly, the people who are in these encampments deserve better. And so the people who choose to be in and around these encampments certainly deserve better. What is in the courts is the city's ordinance limiting the amount of space a person can claim as their own on the streets, and empty lots that are being used by tents, couches, cooking utensils, and other things. Let me be very clear. The ordinances that we put in place never criminalize a person for being homeless, but the ordinance was intended to get at those things, those tents, those couches, big pieces of items that people are bringing into the public space, that's creating a public health hazard and creating public safety concerns. And I do not believe that the judge intended, for example, for even cars to be brought into these encampments, or for generators that in some cases have been used to power big screen televisions. I do not think that's what the judge intended. But what we are finding that in these encampments, like the one behind me, is that there are some people that have generators, and that they are actually using the generators to watch big screen televisions. That's totally unacceptable. The ordinance has been temporarily frozen by a federal judge, and this week our legal department asked the judge to unfreeze his temporary restraining order. I hope he does, and I hope he will do it very, very, very quickly. There have been a total of 2 murders, it might be 3, but 2 that I know of, and a stabbing here in the last 30 days. The situation has gotten worsened. And prior to the temporary restraining order, based on the 6-point plan that we put in place, which includes the 2 city ordinances, the situation was getting better. The number of tents, for example, down on Chartres Street, in the downtown area, and Councilmember in your district, Councilmember Gallegos, the number of tents had significantly reduced. There were less than 10 that were in that area as a result of our emphasis on housing and providing homeless individuals with housing. The number of tents at this encampment in Midtown, Councilmember Borkin, in your district, the number of tents had gone down. There was only about 40, and that number was going down. And even some of the people that I personally talked to, Councilmember Cisneros, people were agreeing to go to housing or to shelter. It was working because the emphasis was on providing housing to people who needed housing, to remove them from the dirt and place them under a roof. And it was working. Since the temporary restraining order requested by the ACLU, since the temporary restraining order has been put in place, has been in place, the number of tents on Chartres downtown has dramatically increased. The number of tents at this encampment behind me has gone from 40 to about 102 in this area. And the size of the tents has expanded. And now people are bringing even more items. And these encampments have now become a haven for criminal activity, for people who are coming into these camps under the thinking that they are now safe and no one can touch them. And the public health hazard has increased. So the situation has worsened. It is worsened for the individuals who are here, and it's worsened for people in the surrounding area. And quite frankly, it is now posing a greater risk for people in the city of Houston. We will always obey the court order. Okay? We will always obey the court order. But it's our hope that the court order, the restraining order, will quickly be lifted. We have notified this encampment, and we will continue to do what we can to minimize the risk and reduce the criminal activity. And we'll try, and we will work within the parameters of the restraining order. But I have asked our agencies, departments, to move forward, and Dr. Peirce, based on your findings, to do another deep cleansing in both of these sites, to notify the individuals here that starting next week, for example, we'll do another deep cleansing. And we'll do that next week here, as well as to the one downtown. But based on what we have found, even after that's done, people immediately come right back. They immediately come right back. And so it doesn't solve the problem, but we are attempting to minimize within our parameters, we are attempting to minimize the issue. City workers from multiple departments are out in these encampments almost every day offering care and shelter. The truth is that about 3,400 people in Houston are classified as homeless, a much smaller number than before thanks to compassionate intervention by the city and nonprofits. There are more than 100 partner groups that form part of the Way Home program who deserve credit and partnering with the city to reduce homelessness. Just this morning, I was at the Star of Hope. There are new communities off of Reed Road where they are housing hundreds of individuals just this morning. And I would encourage you to go to the Star of Hope off of Reed Road and see that facilities, dormitories, housing, a cafeteria that can feed 600, a chapel, and then on the same grounds, the new Hope housing, building permanent housing for individuals that can go from one to the other. Metro transportation right there on the grounds. So we are making significant strides in providing housing for those who are homeless. But putting that aside, you got homeless on one side, and then you got other individuals who are taking advantage of the situation and creating a worsening situation for everyone involved. Lawlessness, drugs, kush, all of those other things, those items are totally unacceptable. Our 6-point homelessness initiatives have reduced the number by 500. And I want to say that because when we announced this back in April or May, we said the goal was to reduce the number of people who are homeless on the streets and place them in permanent supportive housing by 500. We have reached that mark. We've reached that target. It does work. Of the remaining 3,400 homeless people, about 2,300 spend the nights in shelter. The other 1,100 are in shelter. And quite frankly, There are only about 150 to 200 who spend some hours every day in the encampments like these. But this one, and the one downtown off of Chartres, since the federal judge's order stopped enforcement of the ordinance, the problem has intensified. It is still legal to spend the day on the streets of Houston. If you are homeless, it's still legal to spend the day on the streets of Houston. Homelessness is not illegal in this city. And homelessness is not illegal under the ordinances passed by City Council. What we face here instead is danger and disease. In the last 30 days, this has been the site of 2 homicides and a stabbing. And none of us will rest until we put an end to this hazard, even while we continue to offer housing and care to every homeless Houstonian. We can do better. We should do better for the neighborhood and for homeless people. Everyone deserves a roof over their heads. And let me just say, I respect the ACLU immensely. But on this issue, they are wrong. And they're not helping the people that they claim. They are hurting them. And quite frankly, the people that they say that they're trying to help, they're being murdered and stabbed and robbed. And it's not in their best interest, and neither is it in the best interest of the people of the city of Houston. Let me now, at this point in time, let me call first on Dr. Purse, and then Assistant Chief Bainbridge, and then the 2 council members in whose districts I've been referring to. Dr. Purse.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to reiterate, from the public health standpoint, the conditions out here are really, for the people that are living in these encampments, are really dangerous from a health standpoint. I've done 2 reports now and submitted them to the mayor, and they clearly show the amount of, and I apologize, I'm going to get a little graphic, but huge amounts of urine and feces that are deposited by individuals living here pretty much indiscriminately around living areas. You can see it's under the freeway. There are concrete supports for the freeway. Much of it is at the base of those concrete supports, but certainly not all of it. In some cases we've had where individuals appear to try to be a little bit more sanitary by using large buckets to urinate and defecate in. And unfortunately, those buckets get knocked over, and then you have a large spill. This is going on both here and in the downtown area, in both of the encampments. Now, this is significant because there are diseases that are spread through what we call fecal-oral contamination. And this is not an idle sort of issue. We actually have in San Diego, there is a hepatitis A outbreak that is ongoing for the last several months, the better part of this year, in San Diego, where hundreds of people have become infected with hepatitis A. And it's predominantly the people that are living in their homeless encampments in conditions almost exactly the same as we have here. Now, one thing about hepatitis A is that most people who become infected with hepatitis A don't get terribly ill with it. Yet they are shedding the virus and spreading the virus while they are ill. Now, in San Diego County, they know that they have an excess of 500 people who have become infected. That means that they got ill to the point where they sought medical care. Over 70%, or right around 70% of those folks were so ill that they required hospitalization. That's hundreds and hundreds, predominantly homeless people who become infected to the point where they required hospitalization because of the conditions that they were living in, and that there was somebody in that community who had hepatitis and was spreading it. And tragically, just short of 4%, and in this case in San Diego, 20 people have died. They are dead. This is not something that we're just talking about. These are people who become ill to the point of requiring hospitalization, and some have died. In Detroit, there is a similar outbreak of hepatitis A. The difference between the Detroit situation and the San Diego situation is that it appears that in Detroit, about half of the folks that are becoming infected is because they're sharing needles and using drugs, whereas in San Diego it appears to be just living in the conditions, like we have here in Houston. The numbers are startlingly similar when we talk about the percentages in Detroit. 70% of hundreds of people have required hospitalization, and again, just short of 4%, but yet dozens of people are dead as a result. these conditions simply cannot be allowed to exist. It is dangerous for the folks that live here. It is dangerous for the people who live in and around. In addition, it's not limited to San Diego. It is now the same genetic strain. They've linked it onto the lab and shown us the exact same hepatitis virus that was in San Diego is now in Los Angeles and many other counties in California. It has spread to multiple counties. In addition, it has spread across state lines. It is in Maricopa County or Phoenix, Arizona. It is spreading. And because most folks who become ill with it don't have symptoms, and even those who eventually develop symptoms, they're usually symptom-free from anywhere between 2 and 4 weeks. Once it gets into the population like this, it becomes extremely difficult to stop. The only good news that I have to tell you today is that we don't have that hepatitis A spread occurring here in Houston, yet. And I feel that we have an absolute responsibility to the people who live here, the people who live around here, and the entire community to do what we can to stop it. And as a result, from a public health standpoint, I cannot underscore enough the seriousness of the situation, and I support the mayor and everything he's trying to do to stop this and protect the people. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Dr. Peirce. Assistant Chief Banbridge.
Thank you, Mayor. From the Houston Police Department stance, we certainly have a role in this, but the City of Houston has many other departments that are involved in our response to this very difficult issue. It is not solely a criminal issue. It is a societal issue with a lot of competing interests. And so what we have done is we have brought all of the departments in that can help with the root cause of why people are out here. And I want to also express that it's not just homeless that are out here that you see. There's a lot of other street people mixed in with the homeless that are also dealing and doing drugs. No one deserves to live like this. No one deserves to be a victim. We owe it to the community also, as well as the people that are under the bridge here, to respond. And HPD will respond. We will respond with a proactive outreach, such as the homeless outreach team, and we've always deployed them out here. They know this population very well. They're very difficult to get off the streets, some of them, many of them. We get turned down a lot, but we're going to continue to come out again and again and again. But we'll also enforce all the laws and ordinances that we can. We owe it to not only the population that lives and around here, but also the people that are underneath the bridge. They deserve better. We've got to respond. We're going to be out here again once we start with the cleanup, and we're going to be with the health department on that. The health department, our mental health authority, we have case managers that are working with the homeless outreach team, these police officers that are deployed citywide, and we have been out here in the Charters area and Willer as well. And lastly, I really want to stress to our community, you have such big hearts. The City of Houston and our citizens are constantly giving. We can't express enough that we are very proud to work and to work for them in the city. But I want to say, to make real change in the people's lives that you want to help by giving them all of the things that they need, money, food, clothing, that's great. But let's work together with the social services agencies that can actually help with the root cause of why we're out there. That's the real change, not spare change campaign, and it works. So work with us on that, and we will consistently deploy in a multi-collaborative effort, and we will enforce the law out here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And of course, the ordinances that were passed in April have been enjoined in the temporary restraining order, and it's preventing us from doing a lot of things out here. Just to give a brief status on where things are, Ron, why don't you just come and give us just a brief status? I know some briefs are due to in the federal before the federal court today to be filed today. So,
thank you, Mayor. Last week, the federal court held a hearing on an application for a preliminary injunction, which would extend the TRO the court previously granted. Evidence was submitted on the papers by the ACLU, but there were no witnesses called live by the ACLU. The City of Houston called several live witnesses, including the mayor, to testify about the reason for the ordinance and the city's concerns. We welcome the opportunity to defend our ordinance from the challenges asserted by the ACLU. And I think you hear from the mayor a lot of the reasons why council elected to put the ordinance in place. The court heard our argument, heard our evidence, and set a schedule for promptly receiving additional briefing. And that deadline is today, and back at my office, we're working on finalizing our briefing, which will all be submitted by the end of the day, as should the ACLUs, and we look forward to the court's resolution of the matter, and hopefully on the grounds that we have provided. The arguments and the issues in dispute are constitutional issues. They're of course serious issues. No one maintains that they are easy issues, but we think that we've struck an appropriate balance of the rights of individuals and the rights of the public.
We're in Councilmember District D, and I know Councilmember Borkins has been a very passionate and committed person in trying to eliminate the problems and the challenges that are out here. So, Councilmember Borkins.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much. And it was good to hear City Attorney Ron Lewis lay out the steps where we are in the next steps. Hopefully soon we'll see some change. Let me first, Mayor, as you did, welcome my colleagues to my district, Councilmember Jack Christie again, and Councilmember Cisneros, and next who will be speaking is Councilmember Robert Gallegos. Thank you all for being here. You know, a lot has been said, and the mayor did an outstanding job laying it out. I want to thank the mayor and my colleagues for supporting, trying to do something with the issues we're facing with homeless in Houston. I've said it once and I say it again, homeless population is not what you see. Based on my research, the homeless population in our city is between 3 to 4%. And then you have mental illness we need to deal with. And then you have people, I call them con artists, that are taking advantage, drug dealers, taking advantage of people and creating these opportunities. We as a city trying to work. We have a Star Hope that just opened up on Reed Road that will take them in with empty beds. So the services are here. Surge and others want to provide services. They have to want them. So at the same time, I represent a population that's looking for a simple quality of life as well. So I have a balance. Yes, we have human beings that have mental challenges that we need to deal with, and we're doing it. But I also have residents that want to come home and their children want to come outside and play, and they shouldn't be in fear of their life. So I look forward to the federal court ruling. Hopefully it's in favor of doing what the city ordinance has presented before him. That would be that is a fair ordinance that will be able to address this issue. Thank you so much, Mayor, for your commitment to this.
Thank you. And then Councilmember Robert Gallegos has also been someone who's been very, very attentive to this issue within his district. Councilmember Robert Gallegos of District I.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Boykins. I also want to say that I'm here in support of our city ordinance that the council voted on. I want to thank the mayor for staying on top of this. This is issues that are affecting the entire city. I know that in my district over there behind the Minute Maid Park, we have an encampment there as well. And it's not safe. It's a public space like the mayor says. And when individuals are actually going to the ballpark and they have to encounter individuals that are there on their way to the ballpark. So it's a health hazard. It's also a place where crime does happen, where people don't feel safe. And again, it's a public space where individuals are walking to the ballpark. So that's a concern. And again, we're not trying to criminalize the homeless, we're trying to provide housing for the homeless. Quiero decir que tenemos dos encampamientos aquí en la ciudad de Houston, el que está aquí atrás de nosotros y uno que está en el distrito I, el distrito que yo represento, que está allá cerca del Minute Maid Park. Y quiero decir que la cosa que tenemos el problema es que salud y el crimen, y por eso estamos aquí contra los encampamientos. La ciudad está ofreciendo hogares para personas que necesitan hogar. No estamos criminalizando los individuales que necesitan hogares, porque la ciudad le están ayudando, y por eso estamos aquí con el alcalde Turner diciendo que necesitamos trabajar juntos para ver qué podemos hacer contra las personas que necesitan ayuda, y estamos aquí a ayudarlos. So, gracias.
Okay. we'll take any questions that anyone may have. You can forward those questions to any individuals who I have here, members with the press. Any questions?
What are the things can we do to solve this problem? Obviously, when we talk to people in the community, they don't feel safe because they have them around, but they want to help them as well. So what other things can we do as community to help them out?
Well, the 6-point strategy that we put in place back in April is a strategy that was working. It was working prior to the temporary restraining order. The key to homelessness is to provide housing. That's number one, permanent supportive housing. And the goal was to provide housing to 500 individuals who were on the streets. We've achieved that goal. We've done that. But it also was a part of it, say no to these big items like generators and grills and sofas and mattresses and tents. Those were the things that would have eliminated, audiences would have eliminated those items. Doesn't do anything about criminalizing the homelessness. And basically it says no one, whether you're homeless or someone else does not, you can't have these items in the public space. That particular part of what we did, or the strategies we put in place was enjoined by the temporary restraining order that the ACLU sought. That we will stop. We was also planning to place emphasis on people who were suffering from behavioral and mental health and substance abuse to provide them with the treatments. And we were moving in that direction. And you heard Chief Bambridge speak about that holistic sort of care. So we were moving in that direction. Just today, if you go up 288 and Reed Road, you will see what the Star of Hope and the Way Home are doing, providing shelter and apartments to people who have been homeless, people who are suffering from behavioral or mental health issues or substance abuse, providing workforce opportunities. So we are doing some meaningful things. But I want to separate those who are homeless from these encampments. I want to separate the two. These encampments do not do anyone any good. They're not doing people any good. They're not helpful for people who are staying there. Since the temporary restraining order was put in place, people have literally died. People have been killed since then. Stabbings have occurred since then. The number of tents, in some cases, have gone from 40 to 103. Okay? So the situation has gotten worse. And you heard what Dr. Peirce said. Now, we will always respect a judge's order. But we'll do everything that legal authorizes the administration to do in order to reduce the health hazard and the public law challenges that exist in these encampments. So next week, we'll do another deep cleansing at both sites. Okay? We will do that. And we'll provide security, HPD, as much as it can, will be patrolling the areas. But we do need the restraining order to be removed in order for us to effectively protect the public space. Okay? Some have said, okay, Mayor, why not just shut it down? Well, when you're under a federal court order, you don't want to do anything that really is not going to be viewed favorably by that judge. That will only make the situation worse. So we're having to walk a tightrope in terms of what we can do, how far we can go, but we do know that the encampments have gotten worse, that there are public safety issues, there are public health issues that we simply cannot ignore. We simply cannot. So we'll do as much as we can without contravening the court order that's in place.
Mayor, we can expect the judge to make a ruling on what happens next, whether or not the ordinance stays in place.
Ron Hudson. How soon? Possibly for the bill.
Well, all I can tell you is that the judge asked for expedited briefing. His approach appears to be to try to deal with this as quickly as possible, but federal judges don't have a precise schedule by which they have to work, and they have other obligations. So my expectation and hope is that he will get to it promptly, but he does not promise us a particular deadline. I will say that whatever the result obtains, there will still have to be a trial. And we look to ask the court to hold that trial as soon as possible. That sort of request will be put in as soon as we've gotten through this stage of the preliminary injunction.
In the meantime, are there plans to increase patrols, police patrols around here, or put officers in the camp?
The plan is to do everything within our with available means and resources to provide protection not only to the people here but the people in the surrounding area. So the patrols, those things have not stopped. Of course, people would want them to be on a regular basis and a constant presence, but we have to operate within our available means in terms of HPD. Lawlessness is not allowed, okay? Lawlessness is not allowed. And if, for example, when people are on private property, they certainly have the right to call HPD and HPD will respond. But we're going to do everything within our means that's allowed by the city to do without contravening the judge's order. We're just in a very precarious state, but we know that this situation and the situation that's occurring in other parts of the city, the situations are unacceptable, okay? It's getting worse, it's not getting better. And what the ACLU has sought to do, quite frankly, is working directly against the people that they claim to be benefiting. Okay? Yes, sir. Anyway, I'm coming back to you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
If the temporary restraining order isn't lifted, are these problems that you're highlighting, are they just only going to get worse, or
well, if the temporary restraining order is not lifted, it's only going to get worse. I mean, the situation is not getting better. It has already gotten worse within this temporary restraining order was sought, I believe, in August, September. We're now in November. The situation has got exponentially worse. Okay. We want to avoid any sort of public health hazards that Dr. Peirce spoke about. Okay. We're trying to avoid that. That's one of the reasons why we're going to come back in and do the deep cleansing next week. And what that means, everyone has to leave, and we pick up a lot of these items that are out here. We remove a lot of the dirt that's contaminated. Okay? But because of the temporary restraining order, we can't tell people not to come back. And what happened the last time when we did the deep cleansing, as soon as we were gone, people simply came back, and then the number of tents even increased. So we will do what's within our means, but I do want people to know it is unacceptable. And we do have a right, we believe, to protect the public space for everyone. And that's what we intend to do. And hopefully the judge will move very quickly and will lift his temporary restraining order and allow us to protect everyone's interest. Yes, sir. Is that your phone, or you just...
Well, I'm live streaming, but where are the low-level shelters you promised 8 months ago? These are felons and will never qualify for permanent housing. And the only way out of this is low-level shelters.
Well, there's no guarantee. You can't force anyone to go to a low-level shelter, sir.
They will be incentivized.
I understand.
Women will not be raped in low-level shelters.
No, you cannot say that. That is not the case. The goal is to reduce homelessness and provide them with housing. The goal is not to allow lawlessness to occur anywhere, at any time, at any place. No one wants to see these conditions. No one wants to see these conditions. And in order to have low-level shelters, you have to have places that people will send them to, and it costs to have low-level shelters. You have to provide services. That costs money. That costs money. It costs revenue. Okay? Well, it all costs money. It all costs money, sir. And we're working as feverishly as we can. But the reality is what we were doing before the temporary restraining order, what we were doing was working. It was in fact working. The number of tents off of Chartres Street had reduced itself to less than 10. And the number of tents at this encampment was 40 and going down. So the reality is what we put in place was working. Any other questions?
Anybody else?
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.